Okay, let's dive in. We're opening up the Book of Lamentations, specifically chapter 1. And right away, the scene is it's incredibly stark. Devastating, really.
It really is. You're immediately dropped into this picture of a city, once grand, now just completely broken.
That opening line, how deserted lies the city, once so full of people, it just sets that contrast immediately.
It doesn't hold back at all.
Yeah.
And think about that transformation it describes.
Right. From great among the nations, even a queen among the
The
provinces.
suddenly being deserted, like a widow, or even worse, a slave.
That drop from royalty to servitude, it's such a core image, isn't it? Right at the start.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the physical state. Widowhood meant isolation, losing status. Slavery meant, well, total powerlessness.
And verse 2 just leans into that pain, personifying the city weeping. Bitterly she weeps at night, tears are upon her cheeks.
It gives the ruin a body almost, something that feels and expresses this immense pain.
It feels so visceral. And then that next part of verse 2, the betrayal.
Yeah. Among all her lovers, there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They've become her enemies.
That's almost worse than the destruction itself, isn't it? Being abandoned, turned on by those you trusted.
It has this whole other dimension of pain, relational pain on top of everything else. It really highlights the vulnerability.
So that's the city as this personified figure, but what about the actual people? What was their reality?
Well, verse 3 gives us that picture pretty starkly. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. So, displacement, forced out.
And where are they? It says they're dwelling among the nations, but crucially, she finds no resting place.
Exactly. No stability, no safety. Just being, refugees, exiles, always insecure. And it adds, all who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress.
So even when they're down, weakened, they're still being hunted. No escape.
That feeling is just relentless in the text. Now, it also zooms in on Zion, the heart of the city.
Right, the spiritual center. What's happened there?
Verse 4 paints that picture. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed feasts.
That's such a poignant image. The pathways themselves are grieving because they're empty. No more festivals, no community gatherings.
It's like the lifeblood has stopped. The gateways are desolate, the priests groaning, maidens grieving.
It's the complete breakdown of the religious fabric, just bitter anguish, as it says.
Total collapse. And the text is very direct about why this happened. It doesn't really leave room for guessing.
No, it doesn't. Verse 5 says it outright.
Her foes have become her masters. Her enemies are at ease. And then the reason. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins.
That's a central statement here, isn't it? The suffering is presented as, well, a direct consequence, divine action because of their own action.
It frames the whole lament, really. The enemy's victory isn't just politics. It's seen through this lens of divine consequence.
And because of those sins, verse 6 says, all her splendor has departed from the daughter of Zion.
All the outward signs of glory, gone. And the leaders, they're like deer that find no pasture, fleeing in weakness, helpless.
Vulnerable, scattered, unable to protect anyone.
And verse 7 adds this layer of painful memory, remembering the treasures of the past while living in current misery.
That contrast must just sharpen the pain immensely, and it highlights their isolation when they fell. There was no one to help her.
Total abandonment. And then the final insult almost. The enemies looked at her and laughed at her destruction.
Just complete humiliation, mockery on top of defeat.
It really underscores how far she's fallen.
And that link between sin and consequence just keeps getting hammered home. Verse 8, Jerusalem has sinned greatly and so has become unclean.
Yeah, that word unclean here is really significant. It's not just ceremonial. It suggests this deep moral defilement.
And the result, all who honored her despise her, for they have seen her nakedness. Her shame is completely exposed.
Right, and she herself groans and turns away. That internal shame making her recoil is powerful.
And this uncleanness, this filthiness, verse 9 says it clung to her skirts. It wasn't superficial.
It was deeply ingrained. And interestingly, it says she did not consider her future.
Like a failure to see where this was leading, a kind of complacency.
Exactly. That lack of foresight is presented as part of the problem, which led to this astounding fall. It shocked everyone.
And again, that painful refrain, there was none to comfort her. But then there's this direct plea.
Yes. Look, O Lord, on my affliction, for the enemy has triumphed. Even amidst acknowledging her state, the cry goes out to God.
It acknowledges God's role, but still cries out about the suffering and the enemy's success. It's complex.
Very. And the description of the suffering gets even more intense. Verse 10, the enemy taking all her treasures.
And that huge violation, pagan nations enter her sanctuary.
The holiest place, defiled by those forbidden to even enter the assembly. It's a profound spiritual violation, not just material loss.
And the people are desperate. Verse 11 describes them groaning for bread, bartering treasures just for food.
Trading heirlooms, anything valuable, just to stay alive. It shows the extreme famine. And another plea, look, O Lord, and consider, for I am despised.
That sense of being looked down upon on top of everything else.
Yeah. And then verse 12 marks a shift, doesn't it? The voice seems to turn outwardwards.
It really does. It feels like it's addressing anyone passing by, maybe even us. Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look around and see.
Such a powerful, arresting question.
Is any suffering like my suffering? It asserts the uniqueness of this pain.
That was inflicted on me, that the Lord brought on me in the day of his fierce anger.
Wow. Directly linking it again to God's anger. That's bold, even in lament.
It really underlines that complex relationship. It's God's doing, but the pain is real, and it demands to be seen, acknowledged.
And the imagery for that suffering, it's just brutal. Verse 13, from on high he sent fire, sent it down into my bones.
Like this internal consuming agony, not just surface wounds, but pain deep inside.
And being trapped. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back, made desolate faint all the day long.
Yeah, paralyzed, caught, completely drained. The suffering is total body, mind, spirit.
And sin comes back in verse 14 with another incredible image. My sins have been bound into a yoke.
By his hands they were woven together. So sins aren't just past actions, they're this present heavy burden.
Like a yoke on the neck, weighing you down, making you weak.
And the text says God himself wove it, placing it there, making them vulnerable. It saps strength, leads to being handed over to enemies they cannot withstand.
So their own rebellion becomes the very thing that weakens them, empowers their enemies. It's quite the theological statement.
It is. And verse 15 continues that theme of God's direct involvement in the defeat.
The Lord has rejected all the warriors, summoned an army against me to crush my young men.
It attributes the military loss, the death of the youth, directly to divine action. God is shown as actively bringing about the judgment.
And that really chilling final image of verse 15, trampling the virgin daughter of Judah like grapes in a winepress.
It's incredibly violent imagery, often used for judgment on enemies, but here applied to Judah herself, signified by that vulnerable term, virgin daughter. It implies total crushing, total violation.
How do you even respond to that? Verse 16 brings it back to just raw emotion. This is why I weep and my eyes overflow with tears.
The only possible response, really. Overwhelming sorrow. And again, the isolation. No one is near to comfort me, no one to restore my spirit.
And it's not just personal pain, it's generational. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed.
The future is ruined. The loss cripples hope.
Zion reaches out, verse 17 says, but still, there is no one to comfort her. It's absolute.
And again, the text explains why. The Lord has decreed that his neighbors become his foes.
So God actively turned them against her, making Jerusalem an unclean thing among them, shunned.
Exactly. But then, amidst all this pain and accusation, you get verse 18. It's really striking.
It is. The Lord is righteous, yet I rebelled against his command.
Right. In the middle of pouring out all this agony, describing God's fierce anger, there's this clear confession, acknowledgement of fault and of God's justice.
And it's a public confession, too, calling for others to witness, framing the suffering as a consequence of rebellion.
And the visible result, my young men and maidens have gone into exile, the loss of the future generation as the outcome.
Then verse 19 details the internal collapse again. Allies betrayed her.
Yeah, reinforcing the aloneness. And maybe one of the most heartbreaking lines, my priests and my elders perished in the city while they searched for food.
The leaders, starving to death inside the walls, just looking for scraps. It shows the total breakdown.
Utter desperation, hunger overriding everything.
Verse 20 dives back into that internal torment. See, O Lord, how distressed I am in torment within.
And in my heart I am disturbed, for I have been most rebellious. That inner chaos mirrors the outer destruction, and again, it's linked to the rebellion.
It contrasts the external threat, the sword outside, with the internal reality. Inside, there is only death.
Death within and without. A profound state of spiritual and psychological death as well.
And verse 21 repeats the isolation. People hear the groaning, but there is no one to comfort.
The pain is public, but the comfort is absent. And the bitter twist. The enemy's here, and rejoice at what you've done.
Their joy is linked to God's action, which leads into that final, almost shocking plea in verse 22.
Let all their wickedness come before you. Deal with them as you have dealt with me.
Asking for retribution on the enemies, using the same standard God applied to Judah.
But even then, it grounds Judah's suffering one last time back in her own fault. Because of all my sins.
The chapter just ends on that note of exhaustion and pain. My groans are many and my heart is faint.
Yeah, it leaves you right there with the raw physical and emotional weight of it all, unresolved pain.
So walking through Lamentations 1, it's an incredibly raw, unfiltered look at devastation, loss, and this really complex relationship between suffering and, well, perceived consequence.
It really is. The text just lays bare the physical, emotional, and spiritual collapse without shying away from any detail.
What strikes me is how it holds seemingly contradictory things together. The raw lament, the complaint, even pointing fingers at enemies in God's anger.
While also having these moments of profound self-acknowledgement. I rebelled. The Lord is righteous.
Right. It suggests that acknowledging your part, at least as the text frames it, doesn't cancel out the need to cry out in pain.
Exactly. The lament itself, the full expression of grief and even anger, seems presented as a valid, maybe even necessary response to such complete ruin.
So as you think about this chapter, maybe consider this. What does it mean to be in that space where, from the perspective offered here, your own actions are tied to your suffering, yet you still find the voice for the full spectrum of pain? The grief, the shame, the sense of injustice, the appeal for relief, even for retribution against others? That tension is really at the heart of Lamentations 1.